Welcome to the Branded Impact Podcast. On this show, we go beyond surface level branding, honest conversations with industry leaders, behind the scenes of aligned brand building, and actionable insights to help you elevate your presence. I'm your host, Jocelyn Espejo, aka Joe. Hit subscribe and join me each week for the Branded Impact Podcast. Welcome back to the Branded Impact Podcast, the show that takes you behind the visuals to explore the strategy, soul, and storytelling behind bold brands making real impact. I'm your host, Joe Espejo, and today's guest is a powerhouse in the entrepreneur space. Heather Wentler is the co-founder and executive director of Doyenne, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting entrepreneurs and building inclusive ecosystems. Heather is known for her fierce advocacy for equity and entrepreneurship and her unapologetic commitment to building systems that work for all founders and lives out the mantra, be audacious. Today, we're talking about brand evolution, visibility that aligns with your values, and what it really takes to build a brand and a movement with staying power. So let's start from the beginning. Heather, for anyone that's unfamiliar with what Doyenne is, can you share what inspired you and your co-founder Amy to bring it to life?
Yeah, so Amy and I actually met at an entrepreneurial event here in Madison, Wisconsin, where we're headquartered out of, and it was because there was like 130 people at this event, and including Amy and myself and one of the other organizers, 10 women. And we were having this conversation about there's 130 people in this room. Why are there only 10 of us that identify as women here? And why is this the norm in our entrepreneurial community? Both of us have been navigating the entrepreneurial space, me as an entrepreneur, and Amy as she taught entrepreneurship at one of the local colleges. And we're looking at, like, this is a big issue. Are there ways that we can really start to move the needle? So after, having that experience where we met and saying, like, we have this common ground, how do we do this? We had a woman in business breakfast that sold out. We were like, maybe if we can get 20 people in the room, that would be a good conversation. It sold out, close to 100 people.
Amazing.
So we started hearing more and more of the stories and narratives. Like, we put down at the breakfast, the tablecloths were just like butcher block paper. Like, write down your experiences, write down your stories, write down what you would like to see. And that was kind of like our first market research as to what is going on in our local community. And that's when Doyenne took off, as to we can see that this is a need and a gap that we can fill in our community. Now, the organization was never supposed to be what it is today. Like I said, we both had our own careers. We wanted to just serve as a conduit for what was already existing in our space to how do we support and make change happen. What we kept hearing back from the community was, no, you need to build this out. So we spent 2 years of just like having our careers and trying to do this on the side. And then after that, we said, no, I think we need to make a more strategic approach to how do we do this. So I started moving out of one career action. I was teaching within the local K through 12 school district, because that's my background, and also running my company, and said, I'll move out of the classroom and go full-time in Doyenne. And then a couple years later, Amy was able to transition out of working at the college, and she came full-time in Doyenne. And that's really when, like, we built it out to being all the programming and initiatives and spaces that we've created within Doyenne.
So share a little bit more on that, because if we're not familiar with Doyenne, so you created this amazing platform, and I know because we've had the conversation, but for anyone that's listening and kind of new, give me a really quick, like 30-second overview of, what Doyenne is.
Right. So we have 3 main areas that we really focus on. The first one is building the entrepreneur. So our target entrepreneur that we're really working with is within that first like 12 to 24 months of their business. So they've kind of gotten through the I have an idea stage and into the how do I grow and expand this. So within that building the entrepreneur, we have a variety of different programmings, from accelerators to we have our Learning Lab platform, where you can just kind of come in, watch courses, get information and tactile pieces to go back and implement within your business. and also coaching and mentoring services to go along with those different things as you continue along that entrepreneurial journey. The second area is focused on getting dollars into the hands of more entrepreneurs. So we have run an investment fund where we have put money into companies headquartered in Wisconsin. I think our current portfolio is, well, through the fund, we invested either investment of traditional investor investment with here's money, we have a percentage stake in your company, and also grants to 43 companies. And then some of our programs also have grants attached to them to be able to provide dollars to the entrepreneurs who go through them. Another part of that, how do we build the pipeline or get more dollars into the hands of entrepreneurs, is those connectiveness with the other players in our ecosystems. And also not just within Wisconsin, but also looking at what are national trends, what are areas, how do we connect people with the right types of funding that their businesses need. We hear a lot of times everybody wants investment money, but even knowing what does that mean. So we have an investment accelerator program to help understand what does it mean to be an investor, and also what does it mean to take on investment dollars in your company, so that you can understand that whole process. What does it look like? And then what happens post dollars going out? How does that impact both sides as well? And really that's all focused on how do we also start changing the narrative around who is seen as someone who can support businesses from an investor standpoint, and how do we start seeing more of a balance of between gender parity of who's receiving funding. Because as we know, so one, only four, I know I'm way over 30 seconds, but I'm going to keep going.
That's all right. It's too deep. I was like, that's probably a really hard ask. You do a lot.
So only 4% of all companies ever qualify for traditional investor dollars. And of those 4% of companies, only less than 2%, I think the 2023 numbers were 1.8% of those companies that receive investment dollars are led or are solely female-led teams. So the rest is all going to majority. Then there's another number around mixed gender teams, but the majority of dollars are going to solely male-led teams. So how do we start changing that? And part of it is when you're going in to see investors and seek investment, does someone look like you on that side of that table? And starting to have those conversations and starting to see more traction, which leads into the third area, which is transforming the narrative. So part of our building blocks or our guiding principles is that the entrepreneurship ecosystem and the framework of entrepreneurship is broken. It doesn't support the majority of entrepreneurs, and that we believe that entrepreneurship is part of a life or part of your identity, not your sole identity, which is kind of what we hear and still are hearing in a lot of the narrative around what does it mean to be a successful entrepreneur. And so really kind of changing that, flipping the model and rebuilding how we look at this and how do we actually support entrepreneurs, because we also know that entrepreneurs have way higher mental health risks, much more likely to have substance abuse issues. So how do we support entrepreneurs holistically so that we're seeing better outcomes and more healthy lifestyles for entrepreneurs as well?
Interesting. Because there's so much that goes into that. And I think it's like all of the pieces, but I've always joked about how it takes money to make money. But then when you're an entrepreneur and you're starting out, so many of us just believe that we just have to do it with the hard work and the money that we've been able to find. And one of the things I consistently hear from people is they're looking to scale, but they just don't have the capital to be able to do it, because there's only so much that you can do when you are a solopreneur. And then bringing on a team is great, but then you also then have to have the funds or the ability to have somebody that's backing you so that you can basically, if you don't have investing, be able to reinvest everything back into your business. But that can only get you so far before you're in this vicious cycle of you're literally working just to pay your team and keep your business afloat. And that ties right into I've joked and said, you leave the 9 to 5 to work 24/7, because as an entrepreneur, you're like, I am the everything. And if I do put pause or put this down, that means I'm missing opportunities or whatnot, and that's directly related to you. So I can see how all of that vicious cycle kind of pulls into this. You do it in this desire. At least so many entrepreneurs I know leave corporate and start their jobs in this hope and pursuit of time freedom and purpose and value. And then you quickly get caught up into this hamster wheel of you are now the everything in your business. And so you're constantly having to run. So you have built this system where it's like, if you are in the beginning stages, we can help you so that you can set up your framework, hopefully put it in a way that you are not in a hamster wheel.
Yes.
And then I loved, and what I remembered from our conversation was not only is it a place for people to find ways to get invested, but it also for those that have found success and are looking for ways to give back, there's a way to do that without also just necessarily giving back. Like you can open up the door to invest, and now this is another income opportunity for you while you're also supporting somebody else growing their business and doing all those pieces. And I think that's amazing and it's huge. And when you look at the investor community, a lot of times it's not women. The majority of it are men who are investing back to create that additional stream of revenue or income. But that's something that a lot of women just don't think of, whether that be we don't know about it or we don't realize that that's an option or opportunity. So I love that that's something that you've really kind of gotten a hold of and you're like, listen, wherever you are in business, we can help and there's a path. So I guess tell me a little bit more about something that captures the impact that you really had, because you've got these different variables and these different options that you've done. But looking back and reflecting on Doyenne so far, what's one story or feel like one area that you're like, man, this is why we did what we did?
Yeah. Oh man, these are always so hard. Like everybody asks this question, like, what's one success story or whatever, and I'm like, we're also in the hamster wheel where like you're just moving towards the next goal, and you forget to take time to celebrate that goal or really recognize it. We do that too, and so like this, the what's a success story? I think it's really hard because to sound, I don't know, to sound hearts and rainbows, it's like there are successes that we hear every single day. There's successes and we can see change happening every single day with the work that we do. Some days, even that success is like, that was the worst meeting of my day, or that was the worst meeting of my week. But we left it feeling like I was able to break through, or I was able to say something in a way that someone had the light bulb go off and they're like, oh, that makes sense. I can do this now. And whether it's a confidence thing or whether it's like having meetings with stakeholders or other organizations and being like, so what if we just shift a little bit and here's how we're creating more opportunity? That's like sometimes those conversations take months, if not years, to get to that point. But like starting to see those things. And so one thing I've really started doing and being more intentional about is I have a notebook here on my desk, and I call it my joy journal. And just taking time at the end of each workday and writing down, here's something that happened that brought me joy, so that I can go back, and especially on the days when I'm like, what am I doing? I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall or screaming into a void. I can be like, nope, here's here's something that made me happy today. Here's something that reminds me why I keep doing this work. Or, oh my gosh, here's how far we've come with this person. And I do think, to your point, and we were also kind of talking about this earlier before we were recording, was those little moments and how they make big impact. And looking at how do we look at a person. We were specifically talking about team members, and how we look at a team member and say, they were great. That's why we hired them, was because we love their superpower and we love their energy and their commitment. And then somewhere along the line, maybe that diminished, or, they're not doing what they need to be doing, but how can we still spark joy out of that? And I shared with you a story around like even one of my coaching clients that I was meeting with recently, and we've been kind of struggling. And I think part of the struggle was we weren't being real with each other. We were showing up to our meetings and being very much like, okay, let's just check the boxes as to what we're supposed to talk through. And I'm not going to dive any deeper. I'm not going to really challenge you because I've gotten pushback in the past when we've done this. And so we were at a meeting, and I got to the end of it, and I said to them, I was like, does this work? Does this coaching relationship work for you? And they were like, well, and I go, it's okay if we break up. And I gave them permission, and also did it in a way of like, I'm not gonna be mad at you if if this isn't where you need to be right now. And they were kind of like, well, let me think about it. And we talked through like, here's what I'm seeing, here's what they're seeing. And so we could also kind of be able to have that conversation of like, we need to be able to push each other if we're going to be able to have these hard conversations and be able to create growth. And so I meet with them, with all my coaching clients, every 2 weeks. And so they came back 2 weeks later, and I said, what do you think? Should we continue? And she's like, that conversation was exactly what I needed. It got me in the right mindset. It got me to a place where I can feel comfortable hearing your feedback, because sometimes hearing feedback's really hard when it's like, here's where you need to change, or here's where you need to grow, or here's where you need to actually be spending your time and energy instead of doing this other stuff that you might enjoy, but it's too easy. You need to be doing this hard stuff. And also they came with direct, here's what I need you to do for me so that we can move forward. And so the last 3 sessions have been us implementing that strategy. And, when we met last week, there was happy tears in the session, which I was like, are you okay? You've never cried before. Are you okay? And they were like, I just feel so much more confident because I am doing the things that I was so afraid of. I'm putting the time and energy into the areas that need the work, instead of exactly what we've been talking about, of like defaulting into the, I'm going to go back over here and swirl because I know how to do this. And now I'm seeing results by doing the hard stuff, and I'm seeing that my time is more like where it should be at, and I'm having a life outside of work and not feeling like I'm carrying work with me in every aspect of my life. So that's a recent win for me.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, you started that, and I think to kind of give it some backstory for those that weren't part of our pre-recording conversation, it's one of those things that I think a lot of times we get caught up in wanting to serve people no matter what.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it does. And there's 2 facets to this, because I'm going to talk about the serving the client, whether or not it's the right yes or the wrong no. Sometimes I think I said, I was like, sometimes saying no is just leaving room for the right yes. And it can be hard. And we're like, no, but I want to serve the client. Or I'm in a phase where I'm like, I want to say yes to every client that walks in because I want money. Right. And then you eventually can get to the point that you're like, okay, no, I know what I can do. I know who I can serve. And let me make sure that if you don't fit in this box, I guide you to maybe somebody who is a better fit for you right now. And then it doesn't mean that we're not going to be a good fit in the future. It could, but I don't know. Right. But then I think you also touched on a point that I don't want to let go, is the fact that as entrepreneurs, we tend to set the bar, and then when we reach it, we move the bar again. And so we're in this constant state of reaching for something, which is not always a bad thing. Like, complacency is not what we want to be. We don't want to get to a level and be like, okay, we're good. We're not going to keep trying anymore, because we do want to strive for that constant and never ending improvement. Like, you do want to get better. But I think, and I love your joy journal, I also want to encourage people, when you're on this entrepreneurship journey, to sit down and mark what your milestones are going to be, and don't forget to celebrate those milestones. Mm-hmm. And so I have a biz bestie that we chat and we connect sometimes, and it's nice because you have an extra set of ears to remind you that you had a goal that you met, but you forgot that you got there. Yeah. And then you're so caught up in getting to the next one. And so it's like, a lot of times revenue is a huge thing, right? For anyone in business. And so we get to these mile markers, and then we're pushing for the next one. And it's like, man, but like, gosh, I'm struggling. And then the other day I had to sit back and realize there was a day that I dreamed about getting to this number. Mm-hmm. And here I am, and I've been consistently getting there, but then I moved the bar, and now I want to get to a new number. And I'm allowing myself to sit in this like struggle cycle of like, gosh, it's hard. It's whatever. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, I dreamed about the day, before I went into entrepreneurship full time, I dreamed about the day that I could go full time. Right. And then now I've been full time, and now I'm sitting here going, gosh, I'm really sitting here dreaming about the day that I can get a little more time freedom or I can do all these pieces. But I'm like, but I'm full time in my business. There was a day
Yeah.
that I dreamed about being full time. And then now, like, I've got a revenue goal and I'm like, yes, but I move the bar and it's higher. And yes, I am pushing myself, but I am consistently making numbers that I dreamed, like, that I was like, there's no way. Like, am I ever going to get there? And so, yes, take the time, create a joy journal, celebrate the little wins. And sometimes that's really the biggest piece. Like, impact doesn't have to be for the masses, it can be the small wins that over time lead to huge wins. And I love all of that. All of it.
Well,
So fun.
it's you mentioned so many of entrepreneurs come from, I was working at my corporate 9 to 5, and they're not fulfilled. They're fulfilled in a way. I'm This is a generalization. I'm not saying that everybody's like this. The generalization is, I'm fulfilled with the paycheck that I'm getting. And they're
Right.
like, and I love, but this is the part of my job that I love, so I'm going to turn into a business. And it's the same conversation I have with people that are, like, I love to paint and I'm going to turn my paintings into a business. I'm like, anytime you take a hobby and turn it into a job, there's struggle that goes along with it. When you leave your corporate job, you don't have that guaranteed paycheck every 2 weeks. There's struggle. And a lot of times it's exactly what you're saying. It's working through that struggle and having to grow your knowledge base, because it's not just I'm doing this one piece in my job that I loved. When you are a business owner, you're doing the thing that at the corporation had 10, 20 departments to
Yep.
be able to do. That's all on your shoulders now. And so figuring all those pieces out, and I meet with entrepreneurs all the time. Like, I was just speaking at a conference a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about financing, and I said we're going to talk about things that we're told not to talk about, and it might be uncomfortable, but it's going to be okay, and know that we're in a space that we've all either gone through this or we're currently going through it. And I said, I meet with people who have been running their business 10, 15, 20 years, and they've never had a formal budget and things like that. And
Yeah. And
people
that's because
in
they
the
don't
room
think
were
about
like, that's me. I've never had a formal budget. I just know that there's money so I can pay for these things.
it. Right.
It's like, okay, so here's why this piece is important to be able to continue to create longevity. But also, from my perspective, I feel like if you can understand where your numbers are coming in and going out, and how do you figure out forecasting and runway, or how do we add in new expenses, you'll feel a different level of confidence and comfort in your business to be able to keep moving forward towards those next milestones too.
Yes. And I feel like one of my favorites for those that, because I sometimes feel like I glaze over and I have a master's in business. I know accounting. That was like the easy class for me, right? But then when it comes to budgeting in your own world, I glaze over.
Yeah.
My accounting team is like, you have to. And I was like, okay, it doesn't work like that for me. But one of the easiest ways I have found and highly recommend is the profit first. Scary, super hard, but also super simple.
Yeah.
So, like, if you don't know where to start and you're like, I have no idea, this budgeting thing sounds fun, but oh my goodness, check out profit first and see if that can play in. But we have had so much fun conversations about all the things. I want to get into branding for a second because I think this is another area that ties into something that people put off. Like, it's one of those things that I hear consistently. Once I start having success, once I have clients coming in, once I have more revenue, then I will look at doing my branding. Then I will look at doing all these pieces. But I find that it's something that is so key and so vital for people to be able to do on the front end. And I'm not saying you have to go all in and spend $50,000 on a brand, guys. That is not what I'm talking about. I am talking about setting up at least with a foundation so that as you build these things, it goes. So let's chat a little bit about Doyenne and your brand as far as how and what are some of the things that you and Amy did in the beginning. And then, if I remember correctly, you guys did a shift, correct?
We did.
So you started out with a brand, and then what did you guys do? Did you find value? And then what caused you to want to kind of shift that branding?
I mean, your brand is basically your entire identity, and your business is what I kind of feel like. It's what you live and breathe along with what you do within your company. And so that's why people are saying, well, is that on brand? I mean, isn't that like a slang? thing now that the kids saying. That's so on brand. I'm feeling old right now, but um, you know, looking at when someone sees your logo, what feeling or emotion does it spark? When they see the content and the colors that you're putting out on social media or in your newsletter, that is all part of the brand as well. And so our brand, oh my gosh, it was in Microsoft Paint. Our first logo was made in Microsoft Paint because that was our skill level. And what we kept feeling was it didn't feel like it gave us any authority, or I don't know if authority is the right word, but like being taken seriously.
Credibility with it, the authority and the credibility. Like they kind of go hand in hand
Yeah,
where you're like, I can't really quite touch it. And what I usually find is it's that authority, but what you're wanting is if someone looks at my logo, are they going to feel like I'm legit?
right,
Like, are they going to take me seriously and then want to do the rest? So,
right.
yeah,
And
I can see
so we started down, I mean, we founded in 2012. And in 2014 was when we kind of pivoted to me coming full time into the company. 2015 and 2016 were when we, like mid 2015 into early 2016, when we started really taking the feedback from what do people think about Doyenne? What do people want us to stand for? And us having to shift, and I will definitely say it was more me than Amy, because finding that confidence in our voice to say, no, my voice deserves to be heard in this space where I am basically one of how many other in the room. And that's what we really wanted Doyenne to stand for. So that's where, going through all of it, I remember so our tagline of be audacious. And to me, being audacious means, you're strong, you're capable, you're competent and confident, and you feel like you deserve and others respect the space that you take up in a room and the voice that you bring to that experience. We had people come back and say, like, how about be bodacious? Like that was the first version people said, and I was like, oh god, no, that's like cringe. That's like, no, 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 I don't. But to them, bodacious meant how I feel about audacious. And so that's where audacious was like, no, I can feel more comfortable in this, so we can do that. And even, like as we go through every single day right now, and like I said, Amy was much more comfortable in that, owning that brand identity than I was in the beginning. And Amy unfortunately passed away at the end of 2019. And so I have to channel when I'm feeling like, oh, I want to just be small and quiet and not ruffle feathers. I have to channel Amy into me to be like, no, this is what we stand for. This is what we need to be doing. So that's really, like our color palette changed, our graphics changed, our like just overall sense of belonging was a pivot for me especially, but also when people come into our space knowing that we respect them and we want them to be audacious and live audaciously as well. So I think those are all pieces to remember when you're building out your brand as well, as to how to not only how do you and your company fit within that brand, but how does your target market feel within your brand.
I think that's the biggest piece. And it's wanting to make sure that it all aligns because I think sometimes I hear people say, like, oh, I picked colors because I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the conversation we had, right? Like, what was your first brand colors? Oh, we just picked some that we liked. And there's nothing wrong with that. But now it's like, now that you know, and you know there's a thing, you want your colors to represent and they give off a feeling. We look at a color and we feel something. So does the colors that you're using give the audience the feeling that it's what you want them to interpret? Are they getting that sense of like empowerment? And for you, it's that be audacious, be unapologetically you, walk into a room and own it because you deserve to be there. And that's fine. So then does it match? And then that's what I tell people too. I'm like, guys, just because you started with something doesn't mean you're married to it. You're not. You can pivot, you can change, and you can adjust. When you do, though, make sure you just adjust and you commit. Be consistent and let go of all the old stuff. And then you start to roll through. And what I often see is that brands will evolve.
Mm-hmm.
So, where you were 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or even a year ago may not be where you are today because things change. You evolve. As your brand evolves, so does your branding maybe need to.
Right.
Now, if you nailed it and you're like, I am just updating photos and I am updating some pieces and my marketing materials, but my logo, my colors, all of that stuff is on point. I don't have to change it. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. But then what she mentioned, and I don't want to let it go over without being said, is that when you have your branding in place, it allows you to create decisions and make all of those things from that line. Am I on brand? I like to say, am I staying in my lane? As I'm doing this, like this is my mission, this is my branding, this is who I serve. So when I go to create content, whether it be for an email or for a social media post or a blog post, whatever I'm doing, it's so helpful to have my brand on point because then I know these are the fonts, these are the colors, this is the feel that I want to give. And then how do I shift it? Even for this podcast, like talking about the branding for the podcast, they're like, well, what do you want it to look like? I'm like, it needs to be on brand. Like as you talk about the cliche statement, I'm like, well, I want it to be on brand. Now it's its own identity. It's its own identity. It's going to be taking its own shape and form because it is something separate, but I also don't want it to be so misaligned that when people see it, they don't feel like it relates to who I am and what I do.
Yeah.
So I think all of those pieces are so important to be able to tie in. And when you don't know, and there's nothing wrong with Microsoft Paint logos or starting with Canva
Right.
or doing all those pieces, what you want to do though is as your brand evolves and you're ready, you take it to that next level and you elevate as your brand grows in all of those things. Mm-hmm. So I guess what are the next steps? Like what are you guys currently working on right now? What do you see coming up in the near future for Doyenne?
Yeah. Right now we have one of our accelerator programs. They have their like capstone event coming up, and that's exciting because we get to see how they've evolved in the first 12 weeks of the program, and then they have another 8 weeks that they do some intense reflection as to who they are and leaders within their company in various different aspects. And so it's really cool to see how that evolves, so that by the end of the program, they feel ready to go. They're already going, but they're ready to go farther, faster.
I love that.
A few other things, yeah, like summer is, summer's pretty slow for us. So we really are like, how do we intentionally enjoy the time, and also, show other people that you can do that too. Show our clients that you can do that too. And then, oh man, and then the fall and winter gets crazy. Understanding the cycles, right? So like it's understanding the cycles of your business. So I know when I can like literally look at my weeks and be like, oh, I know that this week is going to be crazy because this is in the past. This is how this has typically been. But that also creates new opportunities. So then during those slow times, I can look at where am I putting time and energy to build the company, to create new opportunities, to explore what are the new trends that people are wanting to hear about so that we can adapt and change our programming and our offerings, not just next year, but even how can we make small changes right now to fit those needs so that we can make it more a part of that strategic plan going forward.
And then I think too, you're taking this time, like update your website, you're doing the pieces, right? It's like whenever you know that there's going to be maybe a slower season in your business, it's time to do a check. Mm-hmm. Like, let me check in all the things that I thought I did, because this is something I see often. People will do something like a website and they're like, it's done. It's not. It's a website is not a one and done. It needs to evolve and live and be updated as time goes on. So you have to be, and if you are one of those people who doesn't have a slow season, then you're going to have to purposely plan it.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to have to put some check-ins to make sure that the website is updating the way it should be and doing all the things that it could. So you're not losing out on opportunity. What's another, I guess, from your perspective, and especially because you work with businesses in all different phases, you've got the accelerator for businesses that are in those first, 1 to 2 years, mm-hmm. But what's like the most common mistake that you see founders are making in regards to personal branding? Mm-hmm. And what's your advice on how to avoid it?
So I think that a mistake that people make, this is my own take on it, is sometimes we get too emotional in our brains. And I know that that's like taboo to say, but how do you show up and be real without being too real? Meaning, like, you know, we're not posting here's what everybody complains about, or I'm going to pick this thing that people complain about my business and turn it into an entire communication strategy to justify why I do it. Not everybody's your target market. Take that, internalize it, process it, let it go, or make change without pointing it out to the community. So I think that that's one. I think that I think that telling stories and telling our true experiences is important, but there's time and place for all those things too. And so that's another one that I think sometimes people slide into, especially solopreneurs will slide into a little bit more of, this is my space, so this is my community, I'll get the support I need. But you have to remember, there's not just those people seeing what you're putting out there. There's so many more people seeing. And unfortunately, sometimes that's when it's not on brand.
Authenticity is key.
Yeah.
But then I also am like, it depends on the brand that you've built as to whether or not they need to know all of the details.
Right.
And then I also hear, sometimes people tell me, I want to be authentic, but I also am a private person.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, this is the beauty of building your own brand. You get to decide what you're going to tell people and what you're going to share. Yeah. And then what you want to keep a little bit more private. Yeah. And I'll use myself as an example. Like, I see women out there and there is no judgment. If you decide that you want to have your children in every single post with their faces, more power to you. Right. If your children are good and all that stuff. In my case, my children like to be a little bit more private and I want to be more private. So I infer to being a mom a lot. I talk about being a mom. I talk about my life being a professional Uber driver on the side. I start my second shift, as someone said it the other day. I was wrapping up a call. I was like, all right, I got to get my daughter to soccer. And she was like, all right, your second shift is starting. I'm like, yes, exactly. But I am also very cognizant of, their faces are not all over my socials. Yeah. I don't share them out of respect for them because they don't want to be included, but then that's just my own limitation. So everyone gets to pick and choose what their personal brand looks like. And I know that there's brands out there, like Jenna Kutcher will talk about her favorite recipes and then like certain pieces, like what literally she is doing every single day. Yep. Great. So that's on brand for her because that's the brand that she has built. Mm-hmm. But then not everyone needs to know or cares like what my favorite coffee, like they don't need to know if I showered today. Right. Like that's like everyone's going to assume that you're hygienic. Like we don't need all the way down to those details. Right. But I think that's something that I fear. People are assuming that they have to be like somebody else. And this is where I'm like, when you're building your own personal brand, you get to be authentic to you. Yeah. And then make sure to know your audience and who is it that you're speaking to. Yeah. And then be mindful. That's what I like to say too, because people are watching. Yeah. And so your brand is, what is it? The way it said, it's like your brand is what people are saying about you when you're not in the room. So when you are out and about, if you're on time, if you're, what you're wearing, how you present yourself in a space, all of that is your branding. Right. It's not just a logo and colors. It's all of it inclusive into one. Right. So,
and that's a big lift for anyone to wear, of knowing like I have to wear this quote unquote uniform in my everyday life as well. I want to be able to go to the grocery store in my yoga pants and be like, I'm just buying, my stuff for dinner, and not being like, oh, why, hello, person that might be a client. But that is part of it as well.
Yes, but I also feel like there's permission and grace, right? Like as long as you're not the kind of person that wants to put it on social media all the time that you're at the grocery store. So know your boundaries. Yeah. And so like for me, I'm like, if you're going to share that, then you do need to be on brand when you're in the grocery store. Now, I don't personally share when I'm on the grocery store, and I pick and choose when I'm creating content and where I let people into my space. Right. And so if I decide to go to the grocery store in sweatpants, like, well, if I run into you, like I'm also a person. Yeah. I'm also a mom, and that is on brand for me. Yeah. Like one of the things for me is to really try, and it's a try, guys, I strive for this daily to find that balance where I get to be a business owner and I'm also a person outside of my business. So yes, what Heather is saying is be on brand, but that also does not mean you have to be in your brand colors in something that's presentable at all times and every single day. Just be mindful of where you're bringing people into your space, because then that is where you do need to control the narrative if you are bringing them into all of those worlds. I love that. Okay, well, Heather, if people have been listening and they are curious and want to learn more about Doyenne, where do they find you?
So our website is doyennegroup.org, and we also are on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Doyenne Group are our handles. I personally am on LinkedIn. Joe, you mentioned a little bit about being private. I don't post a whole lot on social media. So if you find my private pages, go ahead, request. You're not going to learn anything. Besides, I like to garden and I have backyard chickens. That's mostly what I post about.
How did we not find out about the backyard chicken before now? But that's awesome because you're private, and this is why you would never have known unless you listened to the podcast that she had backyard chickens. I love that. And so, Doyenne, spell it out for us, please, because I love it, but just in case.
Yeah, so Doyenne is Doyenne. It's a French term. It actually means senior most prominent woman in their field. So.
Oh, look at that. It's fancy and French, and it's at Doyenne Group. If you're looking for her on Instagram or on the website, you can also find the links in the show notes. And so as we leave, any last piece of advice you would like to give somebody that's listening, thinking about taking on this branding journey and entrepreneurship?
I think, I think one thing that we keep kind of is the underlying theme of trust yourself. Trust yourself. I tell my entrepreneurs all the time, you know your business better than anybody else. So trust yourself in the decisions that you're making, and just you're doing great.
I love that. And if you need some assistance, there's groups out there like the Doyenne Group, or this podcast or anything that you want to listen to where there is women out there who have already paved the way and they are willing to give back. So don't hesitate to reach out to somebody. And my last note is branding isn't just about being seen. It is about being understood. So don't be afraid to get out there and show the world who you are. And if you've been listening to this episode and you think that there is someone that would learn or benefit, please be sure to share, like, and subscribe so that you can listen to future podcast episodes where we'll be featuring other amazing women founders. Until next time, keep building your branded impact. That's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Branded Impact Podcast. If today's episode sparked something in you, please take a second to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend who's ready to unlock their rebrand era. And if you're ready for a brand that's rooted in authenticity and built for impact, one that truly reflects your story, your energy, and your evolution, let's connect. Head to brandingbyjoe.com or DM me on Instagram at brandingbyjoe. Thanks for hanging out. Now get out there, show up with purpose, and make your branded impact. I'll see you next week.